So, I was a dating machine in college. I went out with pretty much anybody who asked. The geek with calculator hanging on his belt, the long-haired hippie with the roach clip around his neck. And I didn't sleep with all of these guys, but I knew my way around, if you know what I mean. The thing was, though, this was the 1980s. It was 20 years before Sex and the City and 30 years before Tinder. It wasn't quite the era when girls went to college to get their MRS degrees, but still, I was a certified leader of the hookup culture. I also had a problem because I was leading this culture at a Southern conservative university, one that I will leave unnamed. This is a place where the fraternity boys ruled, and they tended to like to spike the punch to loosen up the girls in their pretty dresses. So 2 weeks into my time at Duke, I went out with a sophomore who I thought was also into respectable free love. But then I found out that he was telling the other guys in the dormitory about our activities, and I was becoming a star. So I cut that relationship off, but I was determined that I was going to continue sleeping with whom I wanted, when I wanted, because I had one big reason for this, and that was my father. If you'd met my father, you would have liked him. He was charming and forward-leaning. He had a firm handshake. He was a leader of the community, an investment banker, and he was great fun at cocktail parties. At home, though, Dad wasn't so much fun. He would sit at the table and invoke God the Father Almighty and tell my sister that she had to twirl her spaghetti instead of cutting it. Twirl it. And one night he came home to find that my mother had already fed us because he was late and we were hungry. And he said, "How dare you feed the children without me? How dare you?" And another night I saw him do a really lewd version of the limbo underneath a curvaceous woman at a cocktail party in our house with my mother standing right next to him. So I knew Dad's behavior was wrong. Still, Dad ruled. He took us to the Caribbean for vacations, and he really liked me. I twirled my spaghetti the right way. So one night when I was 10, though, I turned on the television and I watched the little gymnast Olga Korbut doing flips and spins on her gymnastics mat, and I wanted to be just like her. So I told Dad that I wanted a gymnastics mat. "No," he said, "it's too expensive." But have I mentioned that he was an investment banker? And so I said, "But that's what I want." And he said, "Well, then it'll be your only present from anybody in the family for Christmas or your birthday. Do you understand?" And on Christmas Day, my father came through with his word, and I bounded up the stairs, and I walked into the living room, and I saw one lone present for me in the corner, a pale green gymnastics mat. And there were no stockings, no other presents, no other gifts. In the meantime, the rest of the family was awash in beautiful, expensive presents. I was devastated. I curled up and fell asleep on my gymnastics mat that night, and I came to understand that Dad's issue was not at all about money, it was about dominance. So by the time I got to Duke, I was determined that I was not going to have any man controlling me the way my father controlled my mother. I was going to work hard and get myself out and not let any guy derail me. So my academic career soared, and I dated a few great guys, but I also dated a guy who called me Pumpkinhead. And I also dated someone or had sex with and took Quaaludes with a guy that I knew was giving me the Quaaludes to induce that sex. And then I also let a drunken fraternity guy kiss me, vomit out the window, and resume French kissing me. And then I had problems with the Duke women as well. My roommate tended to roll her eyes at my antics. And one other girl down the hall said, "Someone's been at it again," after I had had another boy over. And at the end of the first year, I had a girl from down the hall lean into me and say, "You know, I think Jesus might be able to help you." I thought she was crazy, and I continued with my wild ways through Duke and out into the working world. But I hit a wall when I was working, and it was Halloween, and I got invited out by a really nice guy, someone that I would have wanted to have as a friend. And trying to be my usual playful self, I arrived at his doorstep dressed up like a hooker. I was in a short skirt with fishnet tights and spiked heels, and he opened the door and he took one look at me and his face just fell. And he was very nice about it. He invited me into his house and he said, yeah, I think I ruined your costume, but this is just a little bit too wild for me. So luckily I brought a change of clothes and I put on my jeans and sweatshirt and I slunk away, drove back home, and I stopped at a Friendly's on the way where I sat at the counter forlorn and alone, thinking it was time for me to change my MO. I was then working in business and I was miserable. So I looked into other careers and I found myself grabbed by public policy, which is the study of the use and abuse of power. I got into a master's degree at Princeton and my career took off. And at that point, I also decided that I was finally ready for a serious relationship. No guy was going to be able to derail me with a Princeton master's degree in my hip pocket. So I went into a period of extended abstinence, which for me was like 3 months. And in that time, a suitor arose. He was a pleasant North Carolinian who won my heart on the steps of Princeton when he told me that his state's motto was to be rather than to seem. This was not my father. So I've been married to that North Carolinian for 30 years now. We have 3 children whom we adore. Free love be damned, I'd found a home.